Hello and welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Sean Lay. 70 years ago, a leader called Barzani made a declaration of Kurdish independence. It was ignored. Last month, his son won a referendum in Iraq intended to achieve it. Baghdad says it will impose its rule instead. If the Kurds are to succeed, Masrour, my guest today, grandson of one Barzani, son of the other, and head of security and intelligence in Iraqi Kurdistan, will need all the guile he's acquired waging war on the group that calls itself Islamic State. He thinks that's earned Kurds the right to a state of their own. But with Iraq, Iran, Turkey and much of the world against them, could this referendum end up delivering the Kurds even less than the autonomy they enjoy now? Masrour Barzani in Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan. Welcome to Hard Talk. Thank you for being with us today. The man driving the independent push is how you were described recently. How has this referendum made things better for the Kurds?
Well, as you know, we've been having problems with Baghdad all along, and we've tried every other means to make sure that we solve our problems peacefully, but unfortunately, the Iraqi government did not address all these issues according to the constitution, and they were not actually accepting us as equal partners, as a part of our deal to be part of Iraq. And after trying all other avenues, we had no choice but really to resort to referendum as a democratic process and as a peaceful means to express the desire of our people about the future relationship between Kurdistan and Baghdad.
You already have a high degree of autonomy. You've had that for the best part of 20 years now. Why have a referendum on independence at this stage?
Actually, the desire of having independence for Kurdistan is, it dates back to almost a century back ago. But unfortunately, we've been treated unjustly all along. And we don't think that autonomy by itself is enough to protect the rights of our people. As we have seen in the past, we've always been subject to threats, to atrocities and attacks against our people. We've been subject to genocide, war, chemical bombardments, Anfal operations. And we need to have some sort of international guarantee so that these atrocities in the past will not be repeated in the future.
You're obviously not accusing the current government. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to be clear about this. You're obviously not accusing the current government of that. You're saying that what happened in the past could happen in the future.
With the current government starting from 2003, after toppling the previous regime, we hope that there will be a new era, that there will be a real power sharing with this new government. We participated voluntarily to go into Baghdad and to create a country, to call it the country for all of us. We ratified the constitution. We believe that this constitution would be fully implemented. But as it's known to everybody that this constitution was not implemented fully. Actually, the government of Baghdad, or the governments of Baghdad, were very selective in implementing articles that served their purpose, and whatever that was a part of a package to satisfy the Kurdish side actually were ignored. So we tried, we tried very hard to make sure that we solve our problems peacefully, but it didn't happen. So yes, the regime has changed. But unfortunately, we've seen that the mentality ruling in Baghdad is moving away from the democratic principles and from power sharing and moving to more of a sectarian regime that is excluding not only the Kurds but also the Sunnis. And this is what concerns us. And we are very worried about the future of our people if we don't have some sort of international protection.
Just before the result was declared of your referendum last month, Haider al-Abadi, the Iraqi Prime Minister, addressed the parliament and declared, "We will impose Iraq's rule in all districts of the region with the force of the constitution." he has right on his side, doesn't he? That constitution you referred to, that you signed up to, does not allow for you unilaterally to hold referendums declaring your independence. And in a sense, haven't you emboldened Iraq to take back from you some of the things that you've enjoyed in recent years? You've challenged Iraq. Your father, the president, says from World War I until now, we are not a part of Iraq. So you clearly don't care about the rest of the country. You can't really expect any other reaction, can you?
We ratify the Constitution, the whole Constitution, and not just some articles that Baghdad chooses to use that serves their purpose. Actually, if you look at the Constitution, one of the reasons that why we called for the referendum is the violation of the Constitution, actually violation of 55 articles of the Constitution, which has given us 55 reasons why we should actually conduct this referendum.
Isn't this problem, though, that you've not just irritated, annoyed, frustrated Baghdad, whatever you may think of that, that perhaps doesn't bother you, but you've also achieved something quite remarkable. You've managed to unite your neighbours, countries like Syria, Turkey and Iran, against you. You've managed to create an alliance that many would have thought impossible by throwing this degree of uncertainty into the equation, into one of the most unsettled regions on the planet.
Well, exactly like you said. So you see that in which environment we live and how much we are threatened by the decisions of these neighboring countries.
But you've made it worse.
Let me start by saying that we have, if you just give me a second, let me explain this. We have conducted a referendum in Iraqi Kurdistan, and this is one of the most democratic, peaceful means of expressing our desire. Let me tell you that, we are living in the 21st century, and it's absurd that we are still struggling, or we are challenged for, to the freedom of expression. What have we done is basically to tell Baghdad what exactly our people want. It has always been Baghdad pushing us to do the referendum indirectly by telling us that we do not represent the entire Kurdish population, or that the Kurdish parties are divided. And this, in fact, is giving a legitimate mandate to negotiate with Baghdad. We have not declared independence right after the referendum. We have just expressed our desire of shaping our future with Baghdad.
Indeed. Let me be clear about this, because a lot of people listening won't know what the question was. It says, do you want the Kurdistan region and the Kurdistani areas outside the region's administration to become an independent state? There's nothing about seeking a mandate to negotiate with Baghdad. There's just a yes or no. People voted, significant numbers, yes. That is a direct challenge to the future of Iraq as a country. And furthermore, by your use of language, talking about the areas outside the region's administration, it's not surprising, is it, that in Tehran and in Ankara, they're worried that the implication is you want their Kurds too?
First of all, this is an Iraqi issue, and I don't think that the Iraqi neighbors should intervene. And in fact, the international community should not allow the intervention of the neighboring countries in internal affairs of a country. The other point that you mentioned, yes, people have voted for independence, and this is a right that's been enshrined in the UN Charter. So there is nothing wrong about people calling for the way that they want to live in their own country. This is, the referendum obviously, was voted by almost 93% of the Kurdish people, overwhelmingly voting for independence. But the point is that we have not declared independence. And we've said that before the referendum and after the referendum, we want to have a legitimate mandate to speak with Baghdad and sort out our problems peacefully. In terms of the territories that you're talking about that are currently outside of the Kurdistan regional government, these areas, let's not forget, are the ones that have been systematically used by the previous Iraqi regimes, where the Kurds have been deported from, and those areas have been replaced by others. So reclaiming those areas is actually goes back to the rise of ISIS. It was ISIS that threatened Kurdistan, and it was ISIS that occupied parts of Iraqi land. And it was the failure of the Iraqi government to protect the people of those regions, which has forced Peshmergas to go and protect those areas. Otherwise, it would have fallen to the hands of ISIS. And now everybody would have struggled to liberate it from ISIS, as they are liberating other parts from ISIS. So going back to those areas doesn't mean our referendum does not really, it hasn't said that it will decide on the fate of those regions, and it's not going to define the boundaries between Kurdistan and Iraq. We have left that to negotiate with Baghdad according to the previous article of 140 in the Constitution that Iraqi government did not implement.
Okay, let me put to you what some of those neighbours are saying. President Erdogan, speaking on the 30th of September after the referendum, said the call for independence will leave only a bleeding wound. And he went further. He said, who are they going to sell their oil to? Because, of course, you've been selling a lot of it to Turkey over the years. Turkey's been quite a good friend of Iraqi Kurdistan. If we close the valve, their income is gone too. We may arrive one night suddenly, he told, he was quoted at a news conference as saying, and since Turkey controls an important supply of what, 80 or 90% of your revenue, the oil supplies, and that goes through a line that's under Turkish control in the Mediterranean, they do that, you're in real trouble, aren't you?
Well, I don't know what has changed. Since 1991, Kurdistan has been a de facto independent state, except for after the Constitution was ratified in 2005, excuse me, where there are some exclusive rights given to the government. The Iraqi government has used all those exclusive rights against Kurdistan.
Okay, but I'm talking about Turkey now. I don't know why
Turkey or any other neighboring countries. Exactly. Yes. We are surprised and don't understand why so much, overreaction by Turkey and other neighbors, and in fact even by the Iraqi government. We have not conducted the referendum to complicate issues. In fact, we believe that the referendum is one of the only remaining solutions to solve our problems with Baghdad properly and address all of these problems that actually are very real. We cannot be delusional thinking that there are no problems and everything is fine. Obviously, what has pushed us to the referendum is because there are certain problems that we have with the country. We have no intention of animosity with Turkey, nor with Iran, nor with Iraq, and we are very surprised by these disproportionate measures that they have taken against our people.
Well, you've thrown the diplomatic equivalent of a hand grenade into one of the most sensitive regions on the planet. Can you really be surprised that this is the consequence? Are you really naive enough to believe that a referendum declaring the desire for independence of the Kurdish people in Iraqi Kurdistan wouldn't send shockwaves across those borders?
Actually, we are surprised that they do not respect the will of 3 million people expressing their free will of how they want to live in this country. But we have never said that we are going to enforce our will on any government or any country. And in fact, we have left the doors open to negotiate, to reach a peaceful solution. So if others are closing the doors and not willing to talk to us peacefully and to reach any solution, then I think they should be the ones to be blamed for whatever consequences they would be responsible for.
You have talked about passionately already in this interview about the commitment and the sacrifice of the Peshmerga, the Kurdish fighters, who have been such a key part in the fight against the group that calls itself Islamic State. How do you think the fight in Iraq against that organisation is going?
Peshmergas have been in the forefront of defeating ISIS, defeating the myth of ISIS, while the rest of the world was actually praising Peshmergas. It was once again the Iraqi government that objected to providing the heavy equipment to the Peshmergas to win this war against ISIS much quicker. And it was at a time where we needed financial support, when we were fighting a common enemy, that the Iraqis cut the budget of Kurdistan, while we were also hosting 1.8 million IDPs and refugees from other parts of Iraq and in Syria that were in Kurdistan. So we were hoping that the international community, and especially Iraq, would come to our support. Now the Peshmergas were praised all those times, but now that they are talking about how freely and democratically they want to shape their future relationship with Baghdad, we once again are coming under attack, while the international community is very absent and very silent. And in fact, their silence has emboldened both Baghdad and encouraged the neighboring countries to take these harsh measures against our people.
Not entirely silent, are they? This was Rex Tillerson, who said after the referendum, he said the fight against the group that calls itself Islamic State is not over, and extremist groups are seeking to exploit instability and discord. We urge our Iraqi partners to remain focused on defeating IS before they start thinking about things like holding referendums on whether they stay part of Iraq.
You're right. I mean, they were not absent in a sense that some of them actually opposed even the referendum, which is a very democratic process. In another way, they were supporting indirectly a sectarian government against the democratic process. Now, in terms of fighting ISIS, we have always said that we are committed to fighting ISIS. We believe we are an active member of the coalition against terrorism, against ISIS, and will continue to do so.
So couldn't the referendum have waited until that process was complete?
Absolutely not. Because, well, the referendum has nothing to do with our commitment to fight ISIS. In fact, when we fought ISIS, our relationship with Baghdad was not the force behind driving us to fight and defeat ISIS. It was our determination, it was the resolve of our people that fought ISIS. So even at this moment, we are ready to fight terrorism as long as it takes. And we don't think that political relations between Erbil and Baghdad will have any negative effect on the war. And we have made that very clear to the coalition forces. We have made that clear to Baghdad. And in fact, we have shown our readiness to work with the Iraqi security forces to fight against ISIS. After the referendum, the operation of Hawija happened. As we saw that there was no negative effect of the referendum on that operation.
What have you said to the Americans? Because they seem very displeased by the decision to hold this referendum. Mr. Tillerson, the Secretary of State in Donald Trump's administration, said of your referendum, the vote and the results lack legitimacy. The US will continue to support a united, federal, democratic and prosperous Iraq. In other words, not an independent Iraqi Kurdistan.
Well, we are very disappointed in that statement as well, because this is the expression of the will and the desire of a nation of how they want to live. We don't think that it is right to impose any sort of mechanism or systems against people that in fact has not been even respected. We had a constitution, we wanted to be a part of this government, we wanted to be a part of this country, but unfortunately this government and the government before that, I mean, they moved away from implementing the constitution
I think you've made that point several times already.
And commitment.
I only interrupt because I'm conscious of time and I want to cover some more ground. I just want to be clear about this. Were you expecting a different response to Washington? You must have given them warning that you were planning to do this. You have very good links, not least because of intelligence with, for example, the CIA. You have very good links with the administration. Were you saying to them, look, it's all going to be fine? Were they saying to you, don't do this? Were they apparently relaxed about you having this referendum? Or at least did you think they were?
We expected that at least they should support peaceful talks between us and Baghdad before and after the referendum. It was the Iraqi government, Iraqi Prime Minister, before the referendum, who said that they are not going to accept referendum now or in the future. That left us no choice but actually to resort back to the will of our people to say what exactly they want. So we are also, yes, we are disappointed in the position that the international community and also the United States has taken, opposing the referendum. What we did not expect is opposing the referendum. Now, even if they did not want to support the referendum, they could have stayed neutral or at least encouraged Baghdad and Erbil to sit around the table and to sort out the problems peacefully. This hasn't happened, and in fact this opposition has emboldened Baghdad to take such measures and in fact even to reach out to the neighboring countries to put a blockade on Kurdistan and to collectively punish the people of Kurdistan.
Let me put you what Michael Rubin at the American Enterprise Institute said at the beginning of the month on his blog. He said, with so many millions of dollars spent lobbying, how could the Kurdish leadership and representatives get so much wrong about American policy? You've been cheek to cheek for so long. They've been so supportive of you. You've been warm towards Washington. You helped them over Iraq when the fall of Saddam Hussein. You've helped them in the fight against Islamic State. How could the communication have got so poor between you that you walk into what now looks like a trap, where your back is against the wall, where you have no significant international support?
We have never said that the United States should choose between us or Baghdad. We've said that they could keep Baghdad if they can. And also to have us as their friends. We still believe that we are very good friends of the United States. We have appreciated and we are very grateful to, for all the support that the United States has provided, and for that, and by the same token, all the, the coalition members that have supported us in this fight against ISIS. So we don't believe that our referendum should be, should give any reason to the Americans or to the rest of the international community to take an opposition side against us. We still believe that they can play a more constructive role in terms of supporting both Baghdad and Erbil to engage in a constructive dialogue rather than taking sides and actually giving room for escalation, which unfortunately nobody is going to benefit from it. So in terms of preventing war or destruction or instability, we believe that it's time for the international community and before all of them, the United States, to actively get engaged and encourage both Baghdad and Erbil to talk rather than escalating tension as Baghdad is actually doing right now.
There was another vote scheduled, and that was supposed to happen in November. That's the presidential election. Your father, of course, Masrour Barzani, is president. He has been so since the summer of 2009. Is that election going to go ahead as scheduled, or has the controversy over the referendum forced that to be delayed?
We are fully supportive of the elections to be held on time, yes.
If your father has delivered the Kurds international isolation and conflict with Baghdad, can he win?
I don't think that it is a personal issue. I think our president has basically did what our people wanted. He left the choice to the people, so this is the choice of the Kurdish people, not just a single person, and 93% of the Kurdish people voted on this referendum to say yes to the independence. So this has been all along the choice of people and not just the president.
Problem is, it's what sort of independence they would get, isn't it? Is your region really capable of being a nation, not just because of those threats internationally to turn off the oil exports so you can't raise the money you need, not just for the fact that what, a fifth of your population is dependent on the public payroll, so if Baghdad stops sending the money up from the city up to you, you won't be able to pay those people, but also, to quote The Economist last month, the local economy is a shambles. Despite President Barzani's appropriation of Kirkuk and its oil wealth, government employees receive about half the pay of those in the rest of Iraq. It's not much of a basis on which to form a nation, is it?
Well, look, I mean, we are doomed to live in a neighborhood that unfortunately we are landlocked. But that doesn't mean that our people cannot freely express how they want to live in the future. We don't believe that our referendum or the results of the referendum are to challenge the neighboring countries nor Iraq. We have looked at this referendum as a solution to reach a solution with Baghdad. We believe that our peaceful relationship with Baghdad and with the neighboring countries is going to be in the best interest of the entire region. It is their lack of understanding of our intention and our will and not accepting us as equal partners in this part of the world that has created this tension. It is not our fault. We are actually calling for solution. We are actually calling for a peaceful settlement with Baghdad, but Baghdad's refraining from talking with us and resorting to legitimacy of the constitution or the reason or rationale, resorting to violence and threatening us that they are going to take over Kurdistan by the use of force, is a clear indication that actually they are not accepting us as equal partners and they are not actually looking at the stability of this region. So, once again, let me keep the record straight. We have no intention of hostility or complicating the already complicated and complex situation here in the Middle East. We believe that by understanding and accepting each other and talking to each other and reaching a solution that is desirable by all sides is the only way forward, and this is what we intend to do. This is where we stand as we speak.
Masrour Barzani in Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan, thank you for talking to us on Hardtalk.
Well, thank you.